from the heart of Dubai, where tomorrow is being built today, to the world. Welcome to the CTO Show with Mehmet. Here, we redefine technology and reimagine possibilities. With Mehmet, delve into the riveting realms of AI, cybersecurity, and digital technology. Experience the thrilling highs and lows of startups. Immerse yourself in the spirit of entrepreneurship and witness the future of business innovation being written in real time. Now, without further ado, let's tune in and explore the future.
Hello, welcome back to a new episode of the CTO Show with Mehmet. And today, and for the first time, I'm talking to someone who's expert in something I decided to start a couple of months back, where someone, especially in marketing, but from a different perspective, which is podcasting. And I have with me Isabella today. I would, pass it to you, Isabella, so you can introduce yourself, what you are up to, and tell us a little bit about, your company and what you are doing.
Thank you so much for having me today. My name is Isabella Sanchez Castaneda. I am the founder and CEO of IsaMedia Inc. We are a digital marketing company focused specifically on podcasting, and even more specifically on podcasting that is meant to turn listeners into buyers, into clients. So I specialize in working with entrepreneurs to create shows that will allow them to really showcase their expertise, increase their thought leadership, and then eventually have people trust them enough and feel confident enough in their frameworks and philosophies that they want to work with them.
That's great. And, this would be actually my first question to you today. So, you help businesses get more visibility through podcast, right? Now, from your experience, how can technology driven startups, because we focus a lot on technology driven startups in the show here, leverage podcasts as a tool to create brand awareness and engagement?
Yes. So whether it's a technology company or another company, it's all about showcasing your philosophies. So a lot of times people come into a show, especially if they're doing like an internal show where it's only the founder speaking or someone in the marketing department, and they're answering very general questions about technology. Right now, there's so many people talking about what is AI and what is Chat GPT and how is that going to impact us? Instead of rooting it in how does this company view this and what is our philosophy? So if a technology company goes in and says, this is our company stance on AI, this is our approach to integrating this new technology, this new API, whatever it is, into our software or how we work with our clients, it helps people not only receive information, but receive information in a way that they then associate with the company, with the founder, and it builds more of that loyalty rather than just like, "Oh, I could have gotten this information from anywhere."
Yeah, that's great. Now, the question that someone might ask, with all, these available, I would say, platforms to go and publish on, like usually like if they are in the B2C business, maybe they would choose something like Facebook, Instagram. If they are into B2B, maybe they would go to something like more professional, like LinkedIn. Now, why there's a need to have an additional place to go out to the world and say, hey, like you need to listen to our story, which is the podcast.
Yeah, so I'll answer this in 2 ways. The first one is we love marketing and we know that every business has to do it, but it takes so much time. And
Hmm.
so if you instead focus your marketing energy on making a really great podcast, and then from there you pull from the podcast to make tweets, to make LinkedIn posts, to fuel your newsletter, to pull clips from and then show them on Instagram Reels if that's your preferred platform, or TikTok even. You
Hmm.
are then able to maximize the effort that you have because as much as I would love to encourage every entrepreneur to spend more time marketing, I know that the back end of the business and the day-to-day operations take up so much time. The second way I would answer that question is that long form allows you to build trust faster. Anyone can go on to a platform and kind of make up some information, or not make it up, it might be completely true, but they may be able to organize information in a way that is compelling for a 2-paragraph post or is compelling for a 30-second short form video. But for someone to decide, I'm going to put my expertise, my company's values and positioning out on something that is longer than 5 minutes, takes a certain level of authority, and it positions
Mhm.
you in a way where people look at them and say they really stand behind what they're doing. So, from a practical standpoint and from a trust building standpoint, podcasting gets you there so much faster.
Yeah, and I agree with you because since I decided to do it, and I'm doing it just like, of course, I would utilize this for my own business, but when I decide to start, it's like just to make an authority thought leadership for myself. It helped a lot because it can open a lot of doors. You never know who would gonna listen to your podcast. Now, two things I want to ask you, and let me separate the question so we have better answers. Is there a sweet spot, especially I'm asking for entrepreneurs, is there a sweet spot on how often they have to come up with a new episode? Like is it daily, weekly, monthly? Um, and how long, I mean, the duration should be the sweet spot again.
Yes. So I love weekly episodes. Just once a week is fantastic. It's something that is more sustainable for people. It's something that, if we also look at consumer behavior, people love to listen to about an average of 8 podcasts. The typical consumer has 8 podcasts that they like. And so if you do once a week, you're kind of in their flow, in their routine. And also from the sustainability standpoint. The length of time, I don't have a preference. I believe that a 5-minute episode can be as impactful, if not more impactful, than a 50-minute episode. Obviously, if you have guests on your show, you may want something a little bit longer, but it's not so much dependent on the length of time. It's more, how valuable is the information that you're providing? Did you include enough examples? Did you include enough information where the person feels like they really got a good grasp of the concept? Did you make them feel smart? People sometimes, when you go in and you are an expert in what you do, you start to use this like big language and complicated examples, and the other person on the other end kind of feels like, I didn't really understand, and then they kind of turn it off and they're just a little lost. But if instead you go in and you give all the definitions and you allow the person to understand, you make them feel smart, and you make them feel like they actually got something out of it. And again, you can do that in 5 minutes or 50. It's going to be really, how much can you handle as the host?
Yeah, that's informative. And I think, yeah, it depends on the type of business also as well. So the other question that I want to ask you, like recently we started to see all podcasts, majority of them, they also do video podcasts. Like, I mean, they push them on YouTube and then they take shorts, to put them on YouTube as well as YouTube shorts. We see them as reels. Do you think that this is the way podcasting is going to be in the future? So we are a little bit moving from just audio only, although, like, of course, we will still put it on Spotify or Apple Podcasts. But do you see like this is the trend now?
Absolutely, especially as we see Spotify allowing video on more platforms. So, I do video episodes for myself and for all of my clients. I think it just adds that level of engagement. Also, what we talked about before, if you have the video up already, it gives you so much more opportunity to repurpose, to put on different platforms. Some folks will take the full episode and put it on LinkedIn as well. You can get more out of the episode. Also, if you are someone who's in a service industry where you are having conversations more one on one or more directly with a team of a company, having the video also increases that trust factor because they've seen your face before, they've seen your expressions. How do you interact? What's your body language? All of those pieces can really contribute to a show. So, I definitely think we're going to see even more video, and the shows that decide not to do video, at first, I understand that it might be a logistical thing. They may not have the equipment or they may not have the time to edit video. But longer term, for success, the shows that don't have video need to have a good reason for not having video.
Okay. And do you see? like entrepreneurs should, you know, just because one of the things people used to tell me, like, we think, you know, like it's something cumbersome, it's something very complex, you know, like we would not have time. So can I'm not sure if you agree with this or not, but if you don't, if yes, tell me why. If you don't, what are the you know, like kind of myth that people think about podcasts and they should say no, like it's not the case.
I love this question. So, I think the very first myth that entrepreneurs especially get wrong is that you need thousands of listeners for your podcast to be impactful. And when we compare ourselves to what I call passion project podcasts or entertainment based podcasts, and we see that they're claiming that they get 100,000 downloads in the first 24 hours and making this huge impact, we start to get really down on ourselves. And we start to say, well, this podcast isn't making a difference. It's not helping my business when you fixate on those listeners. But what we don't realize is that if we're doing this for marketing for our company, we don't need hundreds of thousands of listeners. We just need the right listeners to come to us. And that could be 10 people, that could be 100 people. And if they're coming in consistently and they're appreciating what we have to give them, then again, it won't matter as much the quantity because we have the quality. And I'm going to get this statistic a little bit wrong because I forget exactly what it is, but Buzzsprout put out some data that if you get something around like 27 or 30 listens within the first week of your podcast being out, you're in the top 50% of podcasts already. And
Yep.
the bar to be successful is not as high as we think it is. It just takes that consistency to just show up, keep going. And that's myth number one for sure. Myth number two is that podcasting is too saturated. When we go on Spotify or we go on Apple Podcasts, we see hundreds of shows and we think, why would mine stand out? Why would mine really be successful? And again, the numbers are on our side. Very, very few podcasts ever make it past their 10th episode. And the Apple always says that they have something like 3 million podcasts on their platform, but really only about 400,000 of them are active. So many of them have stopped posting. So many of them, again, never made it past that 10th episode. Even more of them never made it past their trailer. They put out like a 3-minute clip and then gave up. So it's on the numbers are on your side, consistency is on your side, and that's what it really takes to clear the bar of success with podcasting.
Yeah, I think I've seen this article. It's even it's in their blog on Buzzsprout where they mention, yeah, if you make this in the first week or so, even 2 weeks, you are in the top 50%. So yeah, I agree with you. And just from my perspective, because people ask me, like, it must be hard. It must be taking from you too much time, especially I'm doing daily, by the way. So maybe we need to change this, but a discussion for another time. I tell them, yeah, see, like if you overthink it at the beginning, like, yeah, of course it will take time because you are overthinking the topic. How should I speak? How should I prepare? And you know, like at the end, I discovered also this myself because I was supposed to have this podcast back in 2019, and I kept postponing. And then beginning of this year, I said enough is enough. So let me get started and let's see how it goes. And it went well. And this is like an advice for entrepreneurs to, yeah, like just don't be shy, guys. Like it takes you like, of course, the first few episodes will be the toughest ones, but yeah, like with time you get used to it. And if you are doing weekly, as Isabella said, uh, you you would need just half day maybe between shooting, you know, and maybe you can hire someone to do the editing for you and you know, take care of the logistics. So yeah, I agree with you on this. Now, from marketing perspective, you know, we're talking podcasting, but of course it's all comes to the marketing strategy for a entrepreneur or a startup. What unique approaches other than podcasting, like you usually also advise them to have broader audience in parallel with the podcast?
Yes, I love to combine a podcast with a short form platform. So that may look like Instagram for some people, that may look like LinkedIn. I always recommend an email newsletter and being able to notify people of your episodes, being able to for example, we just talked about some statistics. So what I would do would be share in the newsletter, hey, this is what the episode's going to be about. These are some of the links that we talked about in the episode if you want to dive in further for this information with a strong call to action. Same with the short form platforms. Like I mentioned, you can repurpose really easily from your show and connect deeper with people there. And it creates more of an ecosystem with your marketing. Unfortunately, when we look at all of these platforms, sometimes we start to see them either as completely different, and we have a wildly different strategy for TikTok compared to LinkedIn, or folks on the other side of the spectrum will think that they're all exactly the same and start posting the exact same content with the exact same graphics on everything. And so it's finding the sweet spot and creating an ecosystem where no matter where people find you, they get the same brand vibe, I wanna say. They get the same brand, um, awareness and, like, they understand who you are, but it's, platform appropriate, and oftentimes the podcast can fuel that. I always do go back to that.
Yeah, that's great to hear, Isabella. Like, I think, I've like faced this myself. This fueling thing. Now, some people, they also hesitate, to start this because, they think that, you know, I'm again talking about maybe people who are in the tech industry, and they are entrepreneurs in in that field, and they say, like, the tech savvy people are so picky, how we gonna do this. So, what can you tell them, what consideration, you can tell them, guys, keep this in mind and everything will be okay, and the content that you will release, it will resonate with your audience.
Mm, the sometimes the pushback I get from folks in the tech industry or industries that are a little bit more, um not as sexy maybe, they fear that it's gonna be boring. They think, "Well, why would I put out a podcast if it's just gonna put people to sleep?" But, if everyone is at your company is passionate about what you do, then you know that at least the 20 people who are there, or if you're a smaller startup, even if it's 5, you know the conversations that get you going. You know the conversations that will have people hitting up the Slack and just typing out a bunch of messages there, or will get you in the break room, really going. Pull from that passion and allow yourself to really showcase why it is that your company loves what they do. And allowing people to see that your frameworks, your philosophies are backed by a lot of intention, yes, a lot of expertise, but also people who really care. And you'd be surprised how many people really want to dive in and learn about it. And so, if you're for whatever reason thinking, what I do is too boring or what I do is not going to capture enough people's attention, focus on just capturing the attention of that one business partner that you have, or that one person you met at a networking event who couldn't get enough of what you had to share, and really let them be the person that you're speaking to, and that will actually translate into a much larger audience. And it's just about transmitting, like, how passionate you are. I think, on my show, this is kinda secondary, is when you're talking about similar topics all the time, you start to say, "Well, haven't I talked about it enough? Haven't I said everything I need to say?" And I have a podcast about podcasts. It's not that fun. Like, sometimes to me, I'm like, "I don't wanna talk about the Buzzsprout statistic again." But anytime that I bring it up, people are like, "Oh my goodness, that completely changed my mindset around it. That completely opened myself up." So, if you start to think of it as, yes, it might get a little boring for you, but it doesn't have to be boring for everyone else, it allows you to be more creative and really keep pushing.
100%. And again, if the audience will allow me to share from my perspective, because I thought, because it's a technology podcast at the beginning. This was my aim. And let's say I discussed cybersecurity, right? And then another episode, and I need to mention cybersecurity again. So what I started to do, I said, okay, I have, because it's a tech show. Like, I mean, it's not a tech show. Let me be clear. It's like mix between tech, business, and entrepreneurship. So, but I need to bring these topics from time to time for just educational purposes and for people to know what's happening around. Because again, we discuss the trends, what's going on. So the way I started to do it is sometimes I bring someone who's not necessarily a professional in cybersecurity. I'm just giving an example, but he has the knowledge and he can talk about it from a different perspective. Maybe from a marketing perspective, maybe from a sales perspective, maybe from, maybe he's a motivational speaker. I don't know, but he can convey the message to the audience in this way. So I did this myself on a couple of times, and maybe people started to see, because when I started, my content was so rigid, it was so um I confess, like it was only, like if it I'm just reading the news, right? So like I'm an anchor on the TV and just, okay, like I saw this article, and then I figured out, like, yeah, you can make it fun, because I believe like podcasting is a fun thing as well. Think, guys, like you are on a radio show and you are the host, and yeah, you don't have to be I mean, of course there's serious we need to be serious, but I mean, you can joke, you can, bring the topic, you can add this. And this is why I want to ask you, Isabella, like about how important is also to put our personality and, like give these storytelling things, and make it like dynamic. From It's not only about the content, it's also about us putting, our feelings inside, the podcast.
Yes. Before I answer that, I want to just touch on what you mentioned about cybersecurity and feeling like you've talked about it too much. And again, to us, it feels like too much. But I promise there's someone who has found your show in the last 2 weeks who has listened to only a couple episodes and has only heard you talk about cybersecurity once and is probably waiting for you to talk about it again and again from a different angle. Maybe I follow some people on Instagram who every month put out a reminder for you to set up two-factor notification or two-factor authentication on all of your accounts. And they do that every single month, no fail. And every time I'm like, "Ah, that's such a great reminder." Like and I'm sure to them they think that I've put this out every single month. People are sick of it, but someone has just found you. So I wanted to touch on that piece. And then to your question on I lost your question. Hold on. Tell me again. I was, like, going on about that.
Yeah, about how important is to, put the personal touch, tell
There you go.
stories. Yeah.
Yes. So, with putting in your personality, so I think there's a balance to strike. So sometimes, we can go for that, what you mentioned of, like, being too much of a news anchor and just going in and especially in those quote unquote "boring industries," in those industries that you have to be really precise about your language, you might fear bringing in your personality because you think people won't take me seriously or people won't, appreciate the information as much if I'm telling a joke at the end of it. And then there's the complete opposite end of folks who put in too much of their personality where they're talking about things that are completely unrelated to what they are talking about. So I follow someone who in more of a like less of a technical industry, but is a mindset coach and a business coach combined, and always starts the episode talking about like what just happened in pop culture. And when they're able to connect that back to the mindset reframe that they're giving in the episode, it's really, really valuable. But when sometimes it just feels like it's out of thin air, it creates a disjointed episode and then you're kind of left confused as to why they included it. So always include your personality, have the jokes, have the little moments where you can maybe use a word that is really unique to you, but make sure that it is related to what you're speaking on. And having that balance is something that will only come from practice. It'll only come from doing an episode where you're like, "Ugh, maybe I didn't want to make that joke, but I did, and that's okay. I have another episode coming out next week or another episode coming out tomorrow." And or on the other end, you're like, I was way too serious. I was just not myself there. And it's just giving yourself that feedback and finding the sweet spot.
Yeah, I want to add something here. Remember that your audience are people like you. So there are people who can be serious sometimes, they can be, funny sometimes. And because I work as a consultant for a long time, and especially in the technology consultancy, the idea is these guys are serious guys. Like they come with their suits, like they act like if they are, owning the world and ruling the world. My approach was completely different. So I was going, easygoing, trying to be very friendly, to build the relationship. And actually, I was always, you know, knowing that this is the way that it should be done. And people were criticizing me, hey, like you don't look a serious guy. I mean, like you are very friendly. And then it turned out that actually my method worked the best. So the best project I've worked on where when I was spontaneous, I didn't act, I didn't try to be in another someone else's shoes, showing that, like I'm the serious guy, like I'm working with this big company and coming here. So this I do now. I did the same approach with the podcast. So and this is why, and maybe I think I mentioned in one of the episodes, but if you are listening to us or watching us the first time, so guys, I don't prepare a script for my podcast. I used to do when I used to do the solos one, but I don't prepare. And you can ask Isabella privately if you want. Like, we didn't prepare for this because I believe in the spontaneous discussion. And even when I push the podcast out, I mean, the episode out, I don't edit much. I don't edit unless, like the other day, we had some technical issues. So the guests, they lost their camera for a while, and then of course I need to remove this, right? So I cannot push it, but otherwise I don't remove. Although, like, I have all the tools that can make my podcast looks like I'm speaking without any single, I don't remove them. I keep them as it is because I believe this is how it should be. Now, and the other thing, also I want to mention this. One of my guests, he did something very fun. So he talks about technology. So what he decided to do is Sam Kamani in New Zealand. He decided to talk about technology, but he brings in a comedian to make the things more fun. So yeah, like there are like a lot of creative ways in getting a very boring topic engaging, and you can reach it to the customers. Now, we're almost done and we're coming to the end. And there is one question I want to ask you. Like, it's more about personal learning and growth. So as an entrepreneur yourself, you have successfully navigated challenges and starting a business during uncertain times. What advice do you have for others looking to start their journey? you know and it could be in any sector, like you're in the media, they could be in technology, but I'm sure that there's something that you can share with everyone.
I would say expecting pivots is the biggest lesson I wish I had. Because when I started my business, especially being a much younger entrepreneur, it was, I thought that it had to look like having it all put together and then sticking to that one offer or that one strategy forever. And that if that first strategy didn't work, then it meant that I didn't have what it takes. But when you see the best businesses and the biggest businesses that we look up to in every industry, we see that they started with something and it kind of flopped and it looked one way and now it looks completely different. And they're always iterating and they're always pivoting. And so I have been a podcast producer for a few years, but I was also testing things like Instagram strategy or LinkedIn strategy and how could I help people with their marketing and all of these different platforms until I really found the frameworks and the formulas that I knew would really work for me. And then when I decided to apply those frameworks to my podcasts and my clients with podcasts, then something really clicked and I was able to go in deeper there. And the first iteration of my offers look very different than what they look now. And if I hadn't stopped or if I hadn't, like, sat there and been like, "Oh, I can't believe that you've pivoted so many times," or "I can't believe that you're changing it again." If I had just accepted it as part of the process, I think I would have had a much smoother time. and would have actually probably pivoted faster and gotten to certain milestones with less drama.
I like this. There is nothing wrong with pivoting, even fast. Um, Now I have, I left corporate and I am on my own. Although, like, of course, I have the experience. I've seen others, but of course, still I'm learning in this process. And regarding pivoting, this is something I did even with the podcast, and I did it in public. And I have no issues, and there's nothing wrong in pivoting because my idea first, I thought like I would do only solos, and I would do, you know, less episodes. But then there's something that triggered me to do more. Maybe I will change later, by the way, like I don't know. But you need to listen to what your audience are saying, and then based on that you do. And we discussed this, guys, on different episodes when we brought someone who is, we get professors in entrepreneurship teaching in the universities this to students, and we get the people who learned it them by themselves, and everyone talks about the same thing. You need to listen to your customers. You need to listen to you need to follow the market. And if you something like, let's say, AI comes into the picture and you see like AI might affect your business, so you need to find a way how you can leverage AI actually to get your business pivoted. Like, this is the way we do it. And at the end, I have a famous question, and the question is very simple. What the question you wished I asked you, and how would you answer it?
Oh no. I'm like, what should I say? Um, I think the question that often is most valuable is what would what do I see a lot of podcasters doing wrong when it comes to marketing their business via a podcast? And I would answer that in two ways. One, I think, is I would answer it with being not focused enough. And sometimes, and this is specifically for my personal brands, for the folks who really want to grow their own thought leadership as well as their companies, where they start to bring in way too many topics too early. So they want to talk about, if they are a technology company, they wanna have their episodes about technology, and then they're gonna do episodes about being a working father and being someone who's balancing family and entrepreneurship, and then the next episode is going to be about, finances and managing your finances, and then they go back to technology, and it just becomes too much. So I would say the biggest mistake is not having that focus and really diving in. And I say this because I did this. My podcast started in a way, again, I pivoted in public, as you did, and it was about, like, anything and everything under the sun, and people started questioning, like, "What do you do? What's your expertise in? I don't know what I should trust you in." And once I really started to focus and said, "No, no, no, I'm gonna spend 2023 only talking about podcasting and only talking about marketing via a podcast," people were focused in with me and could understand exactly how I help them, why I have certain beliefs. And so I would say that is going to really transform people's approaches. And on the other side, like we mentioned already, is just not starting, is thinking that it's not for me, thinking that you're not interesting enough, thinking that people don't want to listen to you. I promise there are people who need your message. Whoever's listening to us right now, you have something to say. You have a unique philosophy, a concept that makes your business different that people need to understand, and they're going to best understand it via a podcast.
That's great insight. Yeah, and I did the same mistake again. I confess. So now, the main goal for me is how it's like kind of educational more than it's I would say focusing on something specifically. It's for me. So how I can bring people to talk and encourage fellow entrepreneurs to start, to encourage them to even start a business, maybe start a podcast. They might start, partnership with someone. I don't know. So this is the goal of the podcast now for me, and of course establishing my thought leadership. And this is nothing wrong in mentioning your goals in public, I would say. Well, I really enjoyed the discussion today, Isabella. I hope also whoever is watching or listening to us today that you enjoy. And as usual, if you have any questions, any feedback about this episode or the show in general, please don't hesitate to reach out to me. I would be more than happy to get your feedback and discuss it with you. Also, if you are interested to be on the show, same as Isabella was today, don't hesitate to reach out to me. You can find me on LinkedIn, on Twitter, and you can send me an email as well. And we are trying our best to get the best of the best and make this show really making impact. So if you want to come, please let me know and we will discuss it. Thank you very much, and we'll meet a new episode very soon. Thank you.
Thank you so much for having me.
Hit that subscribe button, share the show with your tech-savvy friends and fellow entrepreneurs, and leave us a review on your favorite podcast app. Your support means the world to us.